This is part 20 of ADO.NET tutorial. In this video, we'll discuss BatchSize property, NotifyAfter property, SqlRowsCopied event of sqlbulkcopy class. BatchSize property specifies the number of rows in a batch that will be copied to the destination table. BatchSize property is very important because the performance of data transfer depends on it. The default batch size is 1. In the example right here, notice that batch size is set to 10,000. This means once the data reader has read 10,000 rows, that's when they will be sent to the database as a single batch to perform the bulk copy operation. NotifyAfter property defines the number of rows to be processed before raising SqlRowsCopied event. We'll discuss the use of the SqlRowsCopied event in just a bit. In the example right here, notice that we have set NotifyAfter to 5,000. This means once every 5,000 rows are copied to the destination table, that's when this event is raised. So what's the use of the SqlRowsCopied event? This event is useful for reporting the progress of the data transfer. Let's look at an example. Let's flip to SQL Server Management Studio. We will be using these two tables in this demo, products_source and products_destination. And if you look at the SQL script here, notice that products_source table contains 3 columns, ID, name, and description. Notice the data that this table has at the moment. It has got 300,000 records. Look at the name and description columns. The data for this table is dynamically computed using this SQL script right here. So basically we are creating an integer variable, initializing that to 1, and we're using a while loop here. So this is going to run until ID value is less than or equal to 300,000, and then we are dynamically calculating the values for ID, name, and description columns. I'll have this SQL script on my blog in case you need it. And I have also created this products_destination table with the same columns, and at the moment this table doesn't have any data. So what we want to do is move all these 300,000 rows from products_source to products_destination, and along the way we want to understand the use of all these 3 properties. So let's flip to Visual Studio now. Here I have a new console application, and all I have done so far is added this app.config file and included a connection string to our sample database. And I have also added a reference to system.configuration assembly, and then within our program.cs file I've included a reference to all these 3 namespaces. So now the first thing that we need to do is free the connection string from app.config file. Configuration manager dot connection strings of the name of connection string is cs connection string, and we want to create a SQL connection object. Let's call this source connection, and we are going to make use of the connection string that we have just read from the app.config file. Now let's create a SQL command object, and we want this SQL command object to retrieve all the rows from products_source table. So that is going to be our query, and we want to use the source connection object. Let's open the source connection, and then let's use another using block, SQL data reader RDR equals command dot execute reader. So we are executing our command. Now let's create another connection to our database so that we can actually write data to our products_destination table. So SQL connection, let's call this destination connection equals new SQL connection, and let's pass the connection string that we read from app.config file. Now let's go ahead and create an instance of our sqlbulkcopy class. Let's call it BC, and let's pass our destination connection object. Alright, so we have the bulk copy object. Now within the source table, that is products_source, we have got 300,000 records. Now if we don't set batch size, then by default what's going to happen, this reader is going to read one record, pass that on to SQL bulk copy, and it's going to write it to the destination table. So one record will be returned to the table at a time. Now instead of that, we can improve the performance by including a batch size. So let's say, for example, we want to set batch size to something like 10,000. So bc.batchSize equals 10,000, and bc.NotifyAfter. So what is the use of this property? Let's say, for example, if we set this to 5,000, then after every 5,000 rows are copied to the destination table, then this object is going to raise an event. And what event is it going to raise? SqlRowsCopied event. So bc.SqlRowsCopied, look at the symbol, it's a lightning bolt, meaning that's an event. And let's associate an event handler with this method. So this is the method that is going to be called when this event is raised. Okay, and if you look at this event handler method right here, notice that there is a parameter called SqlRowsCopied event arguments e. So this object has got this rows copied property, and if you look at the type of this property, it is a long, which means it's going to give us a number, that is the number of rows that are copied, right? So what we want to do here is print a message onto the console screen, console.writeLine, whatever rows that are returned by this property, give a space and then say loaded. So every time 5,000 rows are copied, it's going to print that message to the console screen. So we'll know the progress of how many rows are actually copied to the destination table. And then we also need to specify the destination table name. So what is the destination table name? It is products_destination. So let's copy the table name and specify that here. And then we need to open the destination connection. So let's go ahead and do that. And finally, we need to write the data to the server. So bc.write to server, and we need to pass our data source, reader instance. So let's go ahead and pass this reader object to write to server method. Alright, so with all these changes, let's go ahead and run our console application. Look at that, as the rows are loaded, we get the progress back. So all 300,000 rows are loaded. Now just to quickly verify that, let's run this select query. Notice that it's retrieving the rows still. So you can see ID, name and description columns, and look at that, all 300,000 rows are loaded. Now if you look at what we are doing here, when this event is raised, we want this event handler method to be called. So for that, we have created a separate method, and then we are passing the name of this method as an argument to this delegate. So this is actually a delegate, right? So there are several steps here. Now to reduce the amount of code that we have written here, we can also make use of anonymous function. So if you look at this delegate right here, we have these two parameters. One is of type object and the other is of type SqlRowsCopied event arguments. So instead of creating a separate function like this and then passing the name of that function as an argument to this delegate, what we can do is we can make use of an anonymous function. So we know that we are going to get two parameters. These are the two parameters. So we can simply specify their names. So you can give any name that we want. So just to give them meaningful names, I'm going to call them event args and sender. Okay, so this goes to, and then we define what we want to do. So all we want to do here is print this message onto the console screen. So we can paste that there, and we can get rid of this method now altogether. So this is an anonymous function here. So whenever this event is raised, all we are saying is call this method. And now here we have a compilation error. That's because we don't have an object called e. Instead we have something called event arguments, and that's what is going to have this rows copied property. So let's specify that there. And now if we run this, we will get an error because we already have data in the destination table. So let's actually truncate this table. Okay, so now when we execute the select query, we should not have any rows in that. And let's run this program one more time to make sure it still works as expected. Alright. Thank you for listening and have a great day.